Hello again, friends, and welcome to part 2 of our look at the best cars of the 1980s. And this week, we'll cover the top 10. They're in no particular order, but all are worthy to be in the top 10. Let us know in the comments what you think of the list and if there are any cars we missed. Here we go. Number 10, 1982 to 88 General Motors G bodies. Also known as the G platform within the hallowed halls of General Motors, the G designation was used earlier when several longer wheelbase models were redesigned from the standard 1969 to 72A bodies. Then, a decade later, GM debuted the updated G platform for mid-sized rear-wheel drive autos when the original A body was, by 1982, a mid-sized front-wheel drive car. Got that? What evolved into the subject G body, as most enthusiasts know them as now, really began back in 1978. After dropping a few models and revamping others, GM had a rock-solid line of mid-sized rear-wheel drive cars across all their makes except Cadillac. They were a popular-sized car since the second oil crisis in the late 70s made people reevaluate their personal transportation needs. Not only were the G platform cars practical, but they were also affordable and dependable, and most importantly, quite handsome. The General sold millions of these cars, and they've become quite popular with enthusiasts. They're plentiful, easy to find, many nice project cars are out there at affordable prices, and the aftermarket parts supply is incredible. A person can build one of these cars on a budget, and if they're mechanically inclined, can do it for a lot less than a Camaro or a Chevelle. The cars that encompass this second-gen G body are the Buick Regal from 1982 to 87, Chevrolet El Camino 1982 to 87, Chevrolet Malibu 1982 and 3, Chevrolet Monte Carlo 1982 to 88, GM Caballero 1982 to 87, the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme from 82 to 87, the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Classic 1988 only, the Oldsmobile Cutlass Cruiser 1982 and 83, the Pontiac Grand Le Mans 1982 and 83 in Canada only, the Pontiac Bonneville from 1982 to 86, and the Pontiac Grand Prix 1982 to 1987. Number 9. 1984 Ford Mustang GT 350, the 20th Anniversary Edition. When the Ford Mustang was approaching the 20th anniversary of its first model from mid-1964, the company decided a special edition car was in order. This would be one of many anniversary models Ford would offer in the coming decades, and not just Mustangs. Special and limited production models could be easily marketed to enthusiasts, and a premium can always be placed on them. The 1984 Mustang anniversary car was available as both a coupe and a convertible. All were painted in Oxford white with a medium canyon red rocker stripe and full surround moldings placed midway up the car's body. They all had Marshall fog lamps and a rear deck spoiler. The coupes were available with the optional T-tops or a pop-up sunroof. Most V8 cars, as well as all four-cylinder models, had the classic red, white, and blue emblems with the running horse depicted in chrome. Inside, all had canyon red cloth interiors with a console between the seats. 3 engines were available. First, the 2.3 turbocharged four-cylinder, rated 145 horsepower, which was 30 horses less than the new SVO Mustang at 175. 2 V8s, both displacing 5 liters, or 302 cubic inches, could also be optioned. The EFI-equipped version put out 165 horsepower, but could only be had with an automatic 4-speed overdrive. Finally, a 302 4-barrel produced 175 horsepower and could only be mated up to the 5-speed manual transmission. Because these cars were performance-oriented, the 3.8-liter V6 was not available. For suspension, all of these special pony cars were standard with a TRX suspension, a 4-link rear axle, coil springs, and heavy-duty gas shocks. They performed like any other Fox car at the time. Many standard Mustang options were also available. The exciting thing about these anniversary cars is that they paid homage to an important partnership in the 1960s between Ford Motor Company and Carroll Shelby. Thus, the model designation in the rocker stripes is GT350. Like the original so-called 64.5 Mustangs, these cars started production in March of '84 and were completed in batches through April of '84, the same month the first Mustangs debuted exactly 20 years earlier. A total of 5,260 cars were assembled in both body styles. They've always been considered special, but many were saved and preserved. If you want one all these years on, they're really not hard to find, and unless the car has low mileage, they're priced as a comparable Mustang of the same era. Number 8. 1984 to 88 Pontiac Fiero. The Fiero was originally conceived as a small two-seater sports-type car with all-new suspension and a V6 engine. It's also true that upper management at GM were vehemently opposed to investing heavily in another two-seater sports car that would compete with their flagship sports car, the Corvette. However, Pontiac engineers were initially able to sell the Fiero concept as a sporty but fuel-efficient four-cylinder commuter car that just happened to have only 2 seats, rather than a muscle car that would compete with several other GM offerings at the time. A mid-engine layout was chosen to reduce both aerodynamic drag and vehicle weight, to improve fuel efficiency, and to offer handling, traction, and braking benefits. The performance potential of the mid-engine layout was not initially realized when the Fiero first debuted. As cost-saving measures, many of the engine, braking, steering, and suspension components were carried over from other GM platforms, as well as things like electrical components, saving GM millions in R&D costs. The two engines and their variations were the 2.5-liter inline-4 displacing 151 cubic inches and the 2.8-liter V6 displacing 173 inches. Both automatic and manual transmissions were also available depending on the year and the model. In Italian, the word Fiero means bold, cruel, fierce, haughty, severe, or very proud, while the Spanish language infers to mean ferocious, fierce, or wild. Built for 5 model years from 1984 to '88, the Fiero was the first mass-produced mid-engine car for any American manufacturer. At first, it was green-lighted by GM to be a commuter car for people that wanted more exciting but reliable daily transportation. Originally intended to have a modest performance and handling, Fiero was also able to get good gas mileage by utilizing 4- and 6-cylinder engines to comply with CAFE requirements. But to make the car fun to drive, the Fiero's chassis and structure technology used non-load-bearing composite body panels, contributing to the car's lightweight. Pontiac engineers continually re-engineered various components of the car to enhance its drivability, which continued to attract new customers. A good example of this is the introduction of a new fastback body style for the GT series in 1986. A total of 370,168 Fieros were manufactured over the car's highly successful production run. Unfortunately, quality and safety issues and continued criticism by the automotive press forced Pontiac to discontinue production. Number 7. Chevrolet Camaro IROC-Z. For 1985, Chevrolet introduced the IROC-Z version that was named after the International Race of Champions. Offered as an option package for the Z28, the IROC-Z featured an upgraded suspension, lowered ride height, specially valved Delco Bilstein shocks, larger diameter sway bars, a steering frame brace known as the Wonder Bar, a special decal package, and the optional tune-port injected system taken directly from the Chevrolet Corvette. It also shared the Corvette's Goodyear Gatorback unidirectional tires and received unique aluminum 5-spoke 16 by 8-inch wheels. The new wheels were designed with different offsets front and rear, resulting in the words front or rear cast into the wheels to distinguish which wheel went where. The Camaro IROC-Z was on Car and Driver magazine's 10 best list for 1985. Both a 305 and a 350 V8 were available for these cars. Also new for 85, all Camaros featured refreshed noses and new deeper valances and front spoiler for the Z28 and the newly introduced IROC. The 1990 model year finished the lowest production to date due to a truncated 1990 model run followed by an early introduction of the facelift 1991 Camaros. The last 1990 Camaro rolled off the assembly line on December 31st, 1989. The end of an era. Number 6. 1982 Ford Mustang GT. The Mustang was still an impressive seller for Ford coming into the 1980s, but more competition from other domestic manufacturers as well as some of the imports were really putting the pressure on the team from Dearborn, Michigan. Previously, the Cobra models were the enthusiast-oriented models, but their lackluster performance was no longer acceptable to Blue Oval fans. So in 1982, the Cobra model was dropped in favor of the Mustang GT, which returned after a 13-year absence from dealer showrooms. Catchy new advertisements in both print and television introduced the new slogan, "The Boss is Back." To back up the new image that the car was now projecting, the new GT featured a re-engineered high-output 302 V8 engine that produced a very respectable for the time 157 horsepower with a new and more aggressive camshaft for the revised firing order, a larger 2-barrel carburetor, a dual snorkel air cleaner, and a better intake and exhaust system to improve breathing. A Tremec-built 4-speed manual transmission was standard and only available transmission for the 302. The GT package included the integrated front spoiler with the Marshall fog lamps, while the rear spoiler came courtesy of the 79 pace car, which was also seen on the 80 and 81 Cobra models. Another great styling feature on these Cobras was the full-length hood scoop, but these scoops did not carry over, with Ford designers opting for the pace car's smaller hood scoop. If the customer wanted an automatic transmission in his or her 82 GT, the 302 engine was not available, and the Windsor-based 255 was substituted. The automatic transmission was now a Ford C5, which replaced the C4 in 1981. The menacing GT hood scoop was not standard with this drivetrain, but it could be ordered as a separate cosmetic option. For the Canadian market, it was possible to order a Mustang GT in 82 with the carbureted and turbocharged 2.3-liter engine. This car began the Mustang Fox body craze and is largely responsible for the performance Mustangs that we have today. Number 5. Buick Riviera, Cadillac Eldorado, Oldsmobile, Toronado. All three of these cars were known internally at General Motors as E-body cars. Like Chrysler, GM preferred to use single-letter designations for their various designs. All three of these cars were available from 1979 until the end of the 1985 model year. They were the best GM built for people that demanded a more finely appointed personal luxury car than a Chevrolet or a Pontiac. Of course, the type of buyer that would purchase cars like these were typically a bit older and had higher incomes. They also appreciated models with a long heritage of luxury, performance, and style, which all three certainly still had. While both the Cadillac and the Olds had always been front-wheel drive models, the Buick Riviera nameplate had been around since the 1950s and was always a traditional rear-wheel drive platform so familiar to American buyers. But that would change in 1979 for the 6th generation offering, as now all 3 of these cars were designed and built as front-wheel drive models. All of the traditional Buick V8s were now only a memory, with only the Buick-built 3.8 V6 and the Oldsmobile-supplied 350 cubic inch V8 were found under the hoods of these new Rivies. No longer was the Buick 350 available, nor the Olds 403. However, the Riviera S-Type did offer the new 3.8-liter turbo engine for this model, along with a host of other Buicks clear into the late 1980s. This was a purposeful consolidation of engines as well as a general downsizing of their entire passenger car lineup. This was a radical but necessary strategy for GM to return to profitability as well as meeting ever-increasing government regulations. Buick buyers sure loved this new Riviera when sales more than doubled from the 1978 models, and then the momentum for big sales numbers continued. Motor Trend magazine selected this totally new Rivi as its Car of the Year for 1979. As far as the Buick division was concerned, this new car was a genius move. The 1981 Buick saw the turbo-equipped models renamed T-Type, as well as the demise of the Olds 350 in favor of the Olds-built 307 cubic inch V8. The standard engine was the naturally aspirated 3.8, and a new option of an Olds-supplied diesel V8. These engines were a disaster for GM because they essentially modified the design of a gasoline engine rather than designing the diesel from scratch. In 1982, dealer showrooms displayed a first for Riviera convertible model. Few were built because of the exorbitant high retail price. In 1983, a twin-turbo Rivi convertible paced the Indy 500 race. Most drop tops got the V8, and coupes either got the Turbo 6 or the 307 V8. Overall sales made during the 1980s made Riviera a huge success, reaching 65,305 units sold for the final model year. The 10th generation Caddy Eldorado debuted in 1979 and also achieved a great success in production totals, particularly the larger previous generation and the 11th generation total redesign. By 1984, Cadillac sales set an all-time sales record for one model year of 77,806 units, which included both convertibles and coupes. This accounted for more than a quarter of new Cadillac sales. At a quick glance, the family resemblance of the Caddy and its 2 sister models was obvious, but a closer look revealed the Eldorado was loaded with extra styling and mechanical features in keeping with GM's policy of Cadillac being the standard of the world. Underneath, these cars got a totally new independent rear suspension, which helped rear seat and trunk space in these new downsized models. The most notable styling cue was a radical notchback roofline. The top-of-the-line Barritz models featured a stainless steel roof cap, an homage to the 1957 and 58 Eldorado Bromes. Whiter chrome trim along the tops of the doors and rear quarter glass, and additional fender spear moldings. The Eldorado also featured frameless door glass and the rear quarter windows without a thick B-pillar. As expected, these Cadillacs were loaded with superfluous electronics, which, when new, added a new high-tech flair, but over time, these electronics developed gremlins which were difficult to diagnose and expensive to repair. Throughout their production, these Eldorados had several engines that were available either as standard equipment or optionally. 4 gasoline engines and a diesel. For 1981 only, the Eldorado was fitted with a V8 6.4 variable displacement of their 368 cubic inch V8 engine. It was just another attempt at yielding better fuel economy as CAFE requirements were getting higher each model year. The system was dropped due to customer complaints regarding vibration, and the failure of various government agencies to agree on the real numbers for fuel economy, essentially rendering the entire program moot. For 1982 through 85, Cadillac offered the Eldorado Touring Coupe with heavy-duty touring suspension, close ratio steering, aluminum alloy wheels, and attractive cloisonne hood ornament, as well as body-colored headlamp and tail lamp bezels, wide-ribbed rocker moldings, and a limited choice of available colors. These Eldorados were cleverly marketed to people that enjoyed driving performance cars. Additional equipment included reclining front bucket seats with lumbar support, a leather-wrapped steering wheel, and a center console. Not surprisingly, the diesel engine was not available with this package. Late in the 1985 model year, an optional commemorative edition package was announced in honor of the last year of production for this version of the Eldorado. There were exclusive exterior styling cues and a commemorative edition badge on the steering wheel horn pad. Leather upholstery, available either in dark blue or white, or two-tone blue and white, was included in the offering, along with a dark blue dash pad and carpeting. Exterior colors were limited to either Cotillion white or Commodore blue. In 1984, 8 years after Cadillac built its last production line convertible, the division temporarily resumed production of a convertible version of the Eldorado Baritz. This car was an official Cadillac production option convertible converted by American Sunroof Corporation, and only offered for the 1984 and 5 model years. The VIN specifically denoted this special body style. Interiors were duplicates of what the hardtop had available. Prior to the official 1984 and 5 Eldorado convertibles marketed by Cadillac, a few 79 to 83 Eldorados were made into coach convertibles by independent coach builders such as ASC, Custom Coach, and Hess and Eisenhart. The same coach builders were also responsible for the Riviera and Toronado drop tops during the same period. All of these E-bodies were available only as two-door models and were the last body-on-frame, front-wheel drive models GM produced with longitudinally mounted V8 engines. Number 4. 1989 Ford Taurus SHO. In 1989, Ford had made many radical changes to some of their models, such as putting the Thunderbird and Cougar on a new non-Fox body platform known internally as MN12. This greatly improved the ride, handling, and braking because these cars were heavier than a typical Fox body Mustang. However, the uber-popular Taurus and Sable models in the lineup since 1986 would have to wait until 1991 for a major revision, and even then, it was only cosmetic. Ford was keenly aware of how popular a new class of automobile known throughout the industry as a sports sedan had become, thanks to the Asian and European car companies. Ford really didn't have anything to compete with these cars. In 1984, executives of the Yamaha Motor Corporation signed a contract with Ford to develop, produce, and supply a compact 60-degree dual overhead cam V6 engine based upon the existing Vulcan engine for a front-wheel drive application. At the time, the intended use of these powerful engines was a proposed mid-engine sports car, but that project was quickly scrapped. Now it was decided that this engine would fit perfectly under the hood of a Taurus, which was accomplished by putting a Mercury Sable hood on the car for under-hood clearance. Suspension, steering, braking, and an upgraded interior would define this as a new car. It was named SHO, or Super High Output, to attract buyers who would typically not visit a Ford showroom to purchase a luxury performance sedan. At the time, no other domestic automaker had anything like it. Embraced by the automotive press, the SHO sold better than expected that first year. With the various drivetrain options throughout its history, it would be built for the first 3 generations of the Taurus, from 1989 to 99. There was never a Mercury counterpart. Then Ford put this model on ice for 11 years when the SHO was finally resurrected in 2010, and it would be in the lineup until 2019, the year the Taurus line was discontinued. The various SHO models are beginning to emerge as collectible cars, but many people don't even know about them. The most collectible models will generally be the first editions, the V8s, and the final EcoBoost V6 with twin turbochargers. If you want an exciting driver, the SHO is a good choice. They're plentiful and are reasonably priced for now. Number 3. 1980 to 87 Chevrolet and GMC square body pickups and SUVs. This generation of Chevrolet and GMC truck are arguably some of the most popular GM-built trucks of all time. Beginning in 1973 as a normal styling refresh and to counter Ford's newest models, they were big sellers from the beginning. Available in several body styles of pickup and SUV, like the Blazer, the Jimmy, and the Suburban, millions were produced. That means there are many trucks out there to buy for drivers and potential project cars. But because they're the truck to have right now, prices are going up faster than most other collectible vehicles. As always, it's advisable to buy the best example you can. But there are still some decent project trucks that may need body and or mechanical work. This is not a problem because the support of the aftermarket for anything you can imagine is quite extensive. The many generations of GM trucks all have their enthusiastic followers, but the square body is on fire right now. They're handsome trucks no matter what you do with them. They're easy to work on, especially the trucks that don't have a lot of options. A small or big block Chevrolet engine, a basic automatic or 4-speed transmission, front disc brakes, and limited options make them easy for rudimentary and professional mechanics alike to keep them on the road. Tell us in the comments which square body year and model is your favorite and why. Number 2. 1984 to 87 Buick Grand National and T-Type. 1978 was the first year that the Buick division of General Motors began offering a turbocharged model in the midsize lineup. The first turbocharged model was the Regal. With the turbo, they'd be called the Regal Sports Coupe. Turbo versions were originally offered with either a 2 or a 4-barrel carburetor, but the 2-barrel option was removed the next year. The 4-barrel's horsepower increased slightly to 170. Until 1982, horsepower ratings were unchanged, but for the next year, the max was increased by 5, and then another boost the following year of 5 more for the first Buick Regal T-Type. Many people don't realize that the first Grand National debuted in 1982. It was named after the NASCAR Winston Cup Grand National Series. Buick came out on top in both 81 and 82 in the Manufacturers' Cup. Clearly, they wanted to capitalize on that success because the mantra to win on Sunday and sell on Monday was a proven formula. Buick wanted to revive their performance reputation from the 50s and 60s, and these were the first Grand National cars. They were not painted black as you'd expect. No, all of these limited production cars were all charcoal gray Regals that were then sent to Cars and Concepts for completion. The inaugural year's production was originally expected to be 100 units, but the cars proved more popular than anticipated. Cars and Concepts eventually completed conversions on 215 cars before the end of 82 production. They received unique graphics and paint, but not all were turbocharged. For 1983, there was no Grand National. The Sport Coupe model was renamed the T-Type. A total of 3,732 were produced. Significant power gains were achieved with stainless steel headers into a true dual exhaust system, better electronics to control the emissions equipment, plus many other slight variations that all added up to more power. Inside, there were new bucket seats and a sport steering wheel, controlling a quicker ratio steering box, while the suspension was honed with larger diameter anti-roll bars, altered spring rates, and revalved shock absorbers. In 1984, the Grand National returned, but all were now jet black with special ornamentation. This is the car most people think of when the name Grand National is mentioned. The standard 3.8-liter V6 turbo engine now had sequential fuel injection and distributorless ignition and further improvements to the exhaust and suspension. A mere 5,204 turbo Regals were produced that year, only 2,000 of which were Grand Nationals. Because this was the first year of production of many new innovations mentioned earlier, this is often considered the year and model that started the development of the now legendary intercooled Grand National. The technology to wring this much power from a V6 displacing under 4 liters was quite impressive. These cars could keep up with most V8-equipped vehicles at the time, including the Corvette. For 1985, the Grand National remained unchanged. For 1986, Buick engineers added an intercooler to the turbo. This necessitated designing more durable engine and transmission internals. The Grand Nationals, of which 5,512 were built, and T-Types, which saw 2,384 units leave the factory, were both produced in 1986. For 1987, performance increased 10 horsepower to 245. No further engineering upgrades were necessary from the previous year. Buick dropped the T-Type package for Regal in 1987 models and opted for a T-Sport package instead. There were only 7,896 turbo Regals produced in 1986. In 1987, when turbo Regals reached their peak in popularity, a total of 27,590 turbo Regals were produced through December. For 1987, a lightweight WE4 option was offered. The differences between a WE4 and the Grand National were the interior trim package, wheels, exterior badging, aluminum bumper supports, and aluminum rear drum brakes, as opposed to the Grand National's cast iron, making the WE4 a lighter and faster car. The rear spoiler was only available as a dealer-installed option. 1987 was the only year the LC2 turbo option was available on any Regal, making it possible to have a Limited with a vinyl Landau roof and a power bulge turbo hood. Turbo Regal Limiteds were one of the rarest models of all the turbo Regals produced. Limiteds could be ordered with many options, with most having chrome external trim, but for $35 could have been built with the full blackout trim W02 package, making them extremely rare. Limiteds were treated to a very luxurious interior with plush carpeting and optional bench pillow seats, and a column-shifted automatic. It was also possible to order the 87 Regal T with the 5-liter 307 V8 instead of the turbo 3.8. The 1987 model would be the end of the manufacturing of the rear-wheel drive G-body Regal, but GM had to extend the build of the Grand Nationals to meet customer demand into December. Number 1. 1987 Buick GNX. This car, based loosely on the previously seen Grand National, was certainly a sleeper, both on the street and in serious car collections, because of these cars' desirability and current value. The GNX, or Grand National Experimental, was a bargain in 1987 at $29,000. Today, that would be a tick over $80,000. Still a bargain compared to other cars that had the performance of a GNX. A mere 547 were built, and they are among the most collectible performance cars of the 1980s. The cars started out on the Buick assembly line as jet black Regals with special interiors before being shipped to McLaren Performance Technologies for a complete performance and appearance transition. It was meant to be, quote, the Grand National to end all Grand Nationals, unquote. Modifications performed by the crews at McLaren included the installation of a special Garrett Air Research turbocharger that utilized a ceramic-coated impeller, blowing the fresh air through a significantly enlarged intercooler. connected with a specialized ceramic aluminum-coated intake pipe, made it to the intercooler. The metal heat shield had special GNX identification. Additional mods included a GNX-specific erasable, programmable, read-only memory unit, or EPROM, power control unit computer, a front-mounted auxiliary engine oil cooler, a true dual exhaust system designed for low restriction with special mufflers, a custom torque converter and transmission fluid cooler for the Turbo Hydromatic 200 4R, which also had further mods done during reprogramming, and a redesigned differential cover with an integrated panhard bar, giving these cars much better handling ability and drag racing launch than the standard Regal type underpinnings found on other turbo-equipped performance Buicks of the era. Buick designers knew these cars were special, so it stands to reason that the GNX would have to look different than the standard Grand National. Although both models were jet black, the GNX included functional exterior vents on the upper rear portions of the front fenders, 16-inch black meshed wheels with polished outer rims, VR speed-rated rubber, and deletion of hood and fender emblems. The only modification seen on the outside of the GNX was in the front grille and on the left side of the rear deck lid. In short, these cars are just sinister in their appearance. For those in the know, you didn't want to challenge one of these cars if one pulled up beside you. The interior changes of the GNX included the aforementioned special upholstery, sporting the logo for the turbocharged Buick V6. A special dash plaque was also placed above the glove box, featuring each car's special and unique serial number. The instrument cluster was revised from the standard Grand National to include Stewart Warner supplied analog instrumentation, including a turbo boost gauge. The stealthy appearance of the all-black GNX and its cousin, the Grand National, were nicknamed Darth Vader's car by enthusiasts because their grills resembled Darth's helmet mouthpiece. It was probably a huge factor that the various Star Wars movies were very popular at the time. These cars were also called the Dark Side because of their color, and that was another Star Wars reference. Whatever you want to call them, we believe that there was no more desirable car built for performance enthusiasts then and collectors now. Well, that concludes part 2 of our top 20 cars of the 1980s. We hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, and despite all the negative attention these cars get, there were some pretty innovative and cool vehicles available. Let us know in the comments what your favorite 80s ride is and why. If you feel we left a vehicle off the list, well, let us know that too. If you haven't seen part 1, we'll link it at the end of this video. This was a fun list to do because we were both hardcore car nuts by 1980. Thanks for watching.